But those cases, he says, are not the norm.
Maybe 1%, 5%, 10%. I suspect it's nowhere near the majority. My hunch is the majority of interviews done with kids by frontline workers, Child Protective Service, law enforcement, therapists, pediatricians, are well done.
But prosecutors say that is not the message being heard. Many jurors walk into court, they say, already doubting children, especially young children. In fact, prosecutors in several states told Nightline that in many cases of sex abuse involving children under the age of 6, they are not prosecuting, even when they're sure the child would be a credible witness. Rob Parrish, an assistant attorney general in Utah, is concerned that the cases are proving too tough for many prosecutors.
What I often say to prosecutors is that when we go into a case like this, we have an extra burden. It's not just proving the case beyond a reasonable doubt. We've got to prove it pretty much beyond any doubt.
In a moment, two of the men who have raised doubts about the reliability of children's testimony when Aaron Hayes' report continues.
The thing that would in fact protect the largest number of children from being harmed is to do away with all this bullshit of child protection.
Ralph Underweger, a Minnesota psychologist.
We are witnessing the greatest wave of hysteria in the history of this country.
And Dr. Richard Gardner, a New Jersey psychiatrist, are two of the most outspoken critics of child sex abuse investigators in this country. On a past Nightline, Dr. Gardner criticized what he called the child abuse establishment.
It has attracted a lot of incompetent zealous people, overzealous, who see sex abuse everywhere.
Gardner and Underweger's research and theories, raising doubts about the validity of many children's accusations of sex abuse, have been widely cited in the media, and both have been highly sought, highly paid witnesses for people defending themselves against child sex abuse charges.
I believe the great majority of the questioning of children that is done in this country is highly coercive, highly suggestive, leading, and produces inaccurate information.
Underweger has done research that he says backs him up. He evaluated taped interviews of children who claimed they were sexually abused. Too many of the interviewers, Underweger concluded, used leading or repeated questions, which he says cast serious doubts on the children's accusations.
Yes, it is the case that repeated questioning is the most powerful and the most effective way to produce a false accusation.
But his critics point out Underweger uses his own standards for determining what is repeated and leading. For instance, he has said that interviewers' questions like this one, "Okay, I don't want you to say anything you can't remember for sure," could be considered leading. And most of the tapes he reviews come to him from defense attorneys for whom he consults. When he testifies for them, he says he is paid $2,500 a day. Underweger admits he has no way to know if the children's accounts of abuse in the cases he reviews are actually false.
How do you know in each of these cases that the abuse did not happen?
I don't. That's not my function. That's the function of the justice system.
If that's the case, then there's no reason for him to be expressing an opinion in the justice system any more than any of the rest of us. I mean, you could call anybody in that circumstance to say, I viewed the tape and I think it's a bad interview, so therefore I think this child's probably not telling the truth.
At least 10 courts have disallowed Underweger's testimony. One ruled he did not have bona fide qualifications as a researcher. Another said his work was not scientifically reliable. Underweger does continue to testify, which concerns many of his critics, who say his expertise is colored by what they see as a sympathetic view toward pedophiles. In a Dutch publication 3 years ago, Underweger said, "Pedophiles need to become more positive and make the claim that pedophilia is an acceptable expression of God's will for love and unity among human beings." Underweger says he has always believed sex between adults and children is harmful, but says to help treat pedophiles, they must first be encouraged to openly proclaim their sexuality.
That's what they need to do for themselves, and that's what we need to have them do so that we can deal with it.
In the same controversial article, he said male sex may make women jealous, and that can hold true for pedophile sex, too.
To say that a woman would be jealous of pedophile sex, what do you mean by that? Why would you say something like that?
What's so difficult to understand about that?
It's almost impossible to understand.
In what way?
Why would a woman, in your estimation, be jealous of sex between a pedophile and a child?
If it interfered with whatever the woman had as her purposes or her intents or whatever her relationships were, that's what could occur.
His methods and theories are not accepted by others in his field and have been subject to a great deal of criticism by others in his field.
Prosecutors are also critical of Dr. Gardner, who not only testifies but publishes and markets his own books on child sex abuse, books often quoted in court cases.
Now I want to talk to you about the most common cause of false accusation.
In this videotape produced by a law firm, an attorney cites from Dr. Gardner's research, Gardner's conclusion that false allegations of child sex abuse are commonplace in custody disputes.
This phenomenon has been examined and researched, and it's now been given the name parental alienation syndrome.
That disorder, however, cannot be found in the standard manual of psychiatric diagnoses. It is a term Dr. Gardner coined himself, based mainly on his own experience as a psychiatrist. But the largest study done on the subject to date found that false allegations of child sexual abuse rarely surface in custody disputes. Dr. Gardner declined a videotaped interview for this report, but he sells tapes of his own as well, in which he describes his criteria to help determine whether a child's allegation of sexual abuse is true or false. Among his criteria,
if it sounds incredible, it's probably not true. In extreme cases, children who are sexually abused become like little street smart sluts. I believe that children who are false accusers are going to have a higher incidence of reading mystery stories.
Dr. Gardner concedes no one has scientifically tested his criteria, not even he.
Those tests are not based on scientific reality. They're not verified. They're not validated in any way.
I've got to prepare this case for trial.
But prosecutors say such work is having a real effect in the courtroom.
It has promoted a level of cynicism among a significant percentage of the population. And when you're dealing in an area where you have to prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt unanimously among the jury, a little bit of cynicism can do a great deal of damage.
Balancing the rights of the accused and the abused. Some final thoughts from correspondent Aaron Hayes in a moment. Joining us now from our Chicago bureau, ABC's Aaron Hayes. Aaron, I get the sense that there really has been no conclusion to the story. I mean, your report ends, but it doesn't end with a conclusion. I take it that's because there isn't any.
There really is no conclusion. There's a consensus among those I've spoken to, and that is that the pendulum just needs to swing back to the middle. That there was in the 1980s a tendency to immediately believe children's accounts of sex abuse. Now there's a tendency to doubt children right away, and neither, they say, is reasonable.
And what do the experts say can be done to bring about that happy medium?
Well, they're trying now to remove reasons for doubt, to build more credible cases. There's a great deal of training going on now of police and prosecutors, therapists, even judges, about the best way to interview children to get the most accurate information from them. But having said that, they also say there will never be a crystal ball, an easy test, a simple way to know if an account of abuse is true or false. Each case, they say, has to be determined the old-fashioned way, on its merits, examining all the facts.
Unfortunately, we're talking about fear on both sides. Fear on the one hand of not believing children who deserve to be believed, fear on the other hand of convicting innocent people because of an easily suggestible child.
Well, those I've spoken to say there are two things to remember. The first is that we have to remember that the accused is innocent and has to be presumed innocent until they're proven guilty. But they also say it's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, not, prosecutors say, beyond an irrational doubt. And what they're asking jurors to do is to walk into court with an open mind and a willingness to listen.
And on that note, Aaron Hayes, let me thank you. I appreciate it very much. That's our report for tonight. Tomorrow on Good Morning America, Sarah Ferguson and Evander Holyfield. Then on the Nightline Friday Night Special, an unprecedented town meeting in the Watts section of Los Angeles with the Director of Central Intelligence. He'll be answering questions about the lingering controversy over the CIA's alleged role in the crack cocaine epidemic during the 1980s. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good luck.